Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into another installment of Locked On Eagles Squad. Right there, that's Louie DiBiase, and that's Harry Mays. My name is Mark Farzetta, and we're coming to you on the heels of the Philadelphia Eagles trading up all the way from 32 to 31, but to get a guy that they said they had in their top 10 in Jihaad Campbell, linebacker out of Alabama. There's a lot of question as to whether or not he'll play linebacker, whether or not he'll be an edge, what the Eagles have in store for this 21-year-old athlete. And above all else, he likes to describe himself as not a linebacker, not an edge rusher, fellas. But Harry, he likes to describe himself as a force, a dominant force on the defensive side of the football. I can't remember the last time I was this excited about a 31st overall pick for the Philadelphia Eagles, but I am pretty stoked about the Eagles adding Campbell to their defense.
Yeah, I mean, what an amazing grab at the end of the first round. I mean, you know, when you and I were texting last night as the board was starting to shape up, and I was thinking, man, you know, maybe Starks might be there for him, you know, at 32, and you know, and away we went with all our observations, and then you saw Starks go off the board, I believe, to Baltimore, and then I'm sitting here thinking, man, Campbell's still out there. Like, what could they actually draft a linebacker? Or like, this is where we are, where it's almost like where I'm like, yeah, they're going to do it. And I thought they could do it at 32. I don't really understand the trade up, whether they thought Kansas City was going to allow somebody else to creep in there or what, or if Andy Reid just hoodwinked them out of a 5th-round pick for the heck of it. But, you know, Howie just loves to make a trade. He proved us right because we said they weren't going to pick at 32. They did not pick at 32. They went to 31 and got a top 10, top 15 talent. And thank goodness for the labrum surgery, because he's probably not there, at 31 if he didn't have that surgery on around January, February, whenever it was.
Yeah, Louie, I when I saw that, the first thing I thought was, well, this is another excuse for Howie Roseman to get a top-tier talent much later in the draft. And, I mean, I know you guys saw the video by now of Howie Roseman reacting to be able to get Campbell, but Louie, oh, my goodness gracious. I mean, I mentioned how excited I am to get a player like this at 31. Howie was acting like he had the 5th overall pick, but just pulled off a hell of a trade to get the player that he really wanted. I was blown away by that.
It's incredible that I think 4-5 drafts in a row, the board has just gone perfectly for Howie Roseman to steal a player from normally the University of Alabama or Georgia. That's been a consistent theme of his philosophy. But what's crazy is in 1 year, this guy has drafted 2 cornerbacks in the top 2 rounds, extended a linebacker and a running back to historic money, and drafted another linebacker on day 1. I think that beer can during the parade must have drilled Howie Roseman's brain, because he's doing things he's never done before. But I think that's what's great about Howie Roseman is his open-mindedness, his willing to adjust his philosophy. Vic Fangio's defense needs players like this, rangy, lengthy, explosive players to cover a lot of space in the middle of the field. And I think as you said, he's a force. I think you're doing him a disservice to call him just an off-ball linebacker, just an edge rusher. He's a Swiss Army knife, and he's a type of Micah Parsons, a poor man's Micah Parsons that this defense has really never had before. I'm just excited about all the different ways that Fangio can use him moving forward.
Yeah, I absolutely love the versatility. And you mentioned the Swiss Army knife comment at the combine when he's going through interviews. He was quoted as saying that's exactly how he sees himself. And I love the idea of somebody coming in not being married to a position, a specific position. And it's another thing that the Eagles have applied this philosophy. Now, we've all been blown away at the offseason so far, where the Eagles are not only paying a running back like they paid last year with Saquon Barkley, but they're paying Saquon Barkley now a record number. So that's a different philosophy. Re-signing Zach Bond, a linebacker, different philosophy. And now drafting, and I mean, it's only one pick or one spot, but they still moved up in the first round to get a linebacker in the first round. This is a totally different philosophy that the Eagles are using right now. But I believe overall, other than Vic Fangio's influence, gentlemen, when it comes to Howie Roseman, he's not looking for a linebacker anymore. He's not looking for a running back anymore. He is looking for playmakers.
Right.
And that's something that evaded the Eagles for a long time, where they had this philosophy that I absolutely believe was carried over from Joe Banner for the longest time of, no, we have a number, and it's not your jersey number. We have a cap number on every single position.
Right.
Offensive lineman, you're going to get that money. Quarterback, you're going to get that money. Defensive lineman, you're going to get that money. Cornerback, you'll get the money. But forget about it if you're a linebacker. Forget about it if you're a running back. And now the Eagles have totally made an about face when it comes to just drafting players, Harry, and really signing players as well, that they feel could just come out here, be a dominant force, or, of course, be that playmaker.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Howie said we view him as a front seven player. Put him anywhere, Vic Fangio desires, and he'll figure it out. And, the guy's going to get to the quarterback. He's going to make plays in the backfield, tackles for loss. He's great side to side, has tremendous speed and tremendous size. I mean, you're looking at a guy who's 6'3", 235. I mean, that's a man-sized backer in the NFL. And he couldn't be more excited to be here. I mean, Howie Roseman's reaction is like, yeah, the porn star agreed to go to the prom with me. It's like, holy moly, like, let's go. We're gonna have ourselves a time. Let's do this.
Louie, I know you can relate.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yep. Way to incriminate me. No, I totally agree with Harry, though. And the crazy part is, like, this guy's got 32-inch arms, wingspan for days. So, yes, Howie Roseman did also mention in his press conference yesterday that this doesn't really waver from what they do because he affects the passing game, and that's what they're always focused on both sides of the ball. And he is going to be mostly a pass rusher. Even if he's a stand-up inside linebacker, you're going to see this guy coming downhill a lot. I kind of compare it to not the Devin White of last year with the Eagles, but 2020, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers Super Bowl season. Like, that kind of all-pro player is his potential. But when you look at the length, when you look at the 4.52 speed from the 40-yard dash, he's a guy that can – I was going back and watching some of his highlights last night. He makes it tough in zone coverage. Like, he closes on passing lanes fast because of that wingspan, because of that speed. And I think he can be like a really good stand-up linebacker too. That's the thing, is he's not versatile because he's not perfect in one spot or the other. It's not a weakness, it's a strength. I think he could do either or and develop into a star at either spot. But I think you're kind of doing him a disservice, like I said, to not use him across the formation.
Yeah, I saw it was common a couple of times for different people in this draft about athlete. They're an athlete. That's their position. Yeah. They're not a wide receiver. They're not a cornerback. They're an athlete. I wouldn't pigeonhole him in either spot because I really feel like the Eagles are going to use him in those situations. I mean, we talked about this the other day, gentlemen, when we talked about how you're going to use Azeez Ojulari, how you're going to use Josh Uche, and whether or not those guys, or Uche even makes the squad. We'll see how it goes. But we talked about these guys are on one-year deals. You're going to have to go out there and you're going to say, what if you don't have even Nakobe Dean, who unfortunately has suffered injuries in his young career here and even coming out of Georgia? What if you have issues with Zach Bond this year? What if you have issues with Jeremiah Trotter Jr. and his progression? The Eagles got a guy that could really fill in those spots. And one question I got was, whose job is he essentially trying to take? And right now, I feel after Nolan Smith, the other edge rusher position is up for grabs after Josh Sweat. I like what I saw from Jaxson Hunt in his rookie year. I thought you saw some good flashes, especially in the Super Bowl. But you don't know what you're going to get from Ojulari as far as talking about injuries. You don't know what you're going to get from Uche, talking about a guy who's had one really good year in the NFL. You don't know what you're getting in those other spots. You have somebody here that you feel it could jump into that starter's role. That's how I look at it. And if you're getting a first rounder, you're trying to get obviously a starter here, Louie. When I look at what Campbell could bring to the table here, I think you have that guy that could be in that Hassan Reddick and Josh Sweat type role.
I agree. I think that's probably where his ceiling is best. But the nice part about Campbell is you can figure it out on the fly. You can see what you got with Jaxson Hunt, with Joshua Uche, with Zizo, excuse me. Bryce Huff, I think, is probably on the outs now at this point. I think there's just too many pass rushers I think they'll probably find a trade candidate for Huff. But Nakobe Dean, like you mentioned him, he's going to be a free agent after next year. Can we envision Howie, signing two linebackers to potentially top 10, top 15 money? I'm not sure. So he could replace Dean. He could be the go-to guy opposite Nolan Smith. That's the nice part, is he doesn't have to replace anybody because he's so versatile. It could all work, but he also could present the option if one of those guys don't meet that ceiling. So that's what I love about this, is it's the optionality, that the flexibility he gives you to kind of just figure it out as you go. And until then, you use him as this kind of jackal, just roamer type of player.
Mm-hmm. One thing that really is amazing here, when you and I were texting last night, I was joking that Howie just couldn't stay at 32. Like, he just had to make some deal.
Had to move
up a little bit.
Yep.
He had to just get too antsy. So a couple of reports came out last night during the first round of the draft, all after the Eagles made their pick. One report was that the Eagles tried to move up even earlier in the draft, which makes me extremely curious, Harry, as to what was the offer? What were the Eagles offering if they were trying to move up to, say, 16, 17, even 19? Some of the mock drafts had Jihaad Campbell going around that spot. What was the package like then? And then why the need to move up one spot? Well, the other explanation that came out was that there was another team, maybe, or at least possibly another team, that was trying to move up back into the first round to make the same acquisition. I don't know what you believe, Harry, but as much as I find it funny that Howie couldn't just sit in one spot and move, he had to move up one. I have to think that somebody was on the hunt, not the Kansas City Chiefs, but somebody was on the hunt to get Campbell.
Yeah, I would tend to believe that too. I mean, I don't think you're just making a trade to make a trade. I mean, it had to be just, we have an abundance of picks later in this draft. We got abundance next year. Let's use one to make sure we get the guy that we want. And, that's what those draft picks are for. I thought at some point that, where was it? Atlanta made a trade, I believe, with the Rams and came in and got Pierce, I think it was, at 26. Mm-hmm. And I thought that might be where the Eagles were trying to get to. In fact, I texted you. I said the Rams must not have wanted to deal with Howie. They made a deal with Atlanta. Atlanta gets Pierce Jr. from Tennessee, the edge rusher. And then, you're sitting here saying, all right, now what do we do? Well, we're looking here now at Campbell. They could have taken Campbell there, and nobody would have batted an eye at it. Had they moved up to 26 and got him. But then they ended up getting him at 31 with just giving up, a small price to move up that one spot and make sure they got a playmaker. And you're right. That's what this guy is. He's a playmaker. They lost Josh Sweat, who was an edge rusher. This guy can make plays from the edge. He can make plays from the middle. It doesn't matter. He can cover tight ends. He can cover backs out of the backfield, and he's going to wreck the game. So it was a tremendous draft pick, and whatever the motivation was to move up, I'm good with it.
Yeah, it didn't cost him a lot, Louie. It cost him practically nothing. And as Harry mentioned, you have a situation here where you have a ton of fifth round picks this year. You got fifth round picks next year. You have a bevy of these things. So why not just make sure you get the player that you want? And I do see him as being that starter on the defense. He is that talented. It was a scary position, it turns out, for a lot of other NFL teams. It didn't like nobody likes shoulder surgery, but the Eagles have situations now with linebackers or edge rushers in the last three they've taken in at least the first 3 rounds, where you talk about Nakobe Dean having a shoulder issue. And after he was drafted in the 3rd round, everyone was like, how's the shoulder? He's like, shoulder's fine. I don't know what the problem is. Then they draft Nolan Smith as an edge rusher in the 1st round of the draft. And he tells you after his first preseason game that sometimes his shoulder works and sometimes it doesn't. Well, apparently it didn't work at all in his rookie season, and then came back with fury this past year. And now you have a guy that has the torn labrum, gets surgery after the We're talking about, fellas, a month ago, this guy has surgery. And now you're talking about the Eagles drafting him 31st overall. So at least, Louie, when it comes to any concern about the shoulder, he seems to be ready to go.
I think it's crazy that a team would have a player's stock impacted by a short-term injury if it wasn't chronic. Like Will Johnson, for instance, the Michigan corner, who I thought was a top 15 prospect in this draft, did not get taken yesterday. And that's because there are some concerns about his long-term chronic knee issues. Like Jay Ajayi back in the day, we knew, when he came back in 2019, he looked like he was a 40-year-old running back, and he was only, 26, 27.
No cartilage.
Yes. Those kind of injuries, like Sam Bradford, Sidney Jones level stuff, that would impact a player's draft stock. But a player being available in July versus October for a first-round pick, I guess it could be like the tiebreaker between 2 prospects close on your board. But everybody always preaches like the draft's about long-term. It's not about filling a short-term need. And yet then a Jihaad Campbell falls down the board. So if this was like a thing that you had real long-term concerns about, I would understand. But it sounds like he'll be ready worst-case scenario. Like, he's not going to miss time during the season. And even if he does, the Eagles are set up so nicely with this roster, short-term and long-term, that they can afford to wait. So I think it was the perfect player at the perfect time for the perfect team.
Yeah, how we said after the draft, this was definitely not a need pick. This was a want pick. This wasn't, let's fill a need here at 31. No, I think it does both. And Harry, you and I had talked about it at length. You don't want the Eagles ever in the first round. Any team, you don't want them to be making the pick that is for a need. You want to take the best player available in this. Yeah. And this was the healthy combination of both those things. But you mentioned James Pierce, and I know the three of us had kicked around that name a little bit, but that was a part in the draft after Walter Nolan went off the board to Jonathan Gannon.
Way early.
When he went that early, I went, nobody was concerned about his dedication to football. Okay.
They wanted him to fall. The Cardinals probably put that out there.
Of course.
Right, exactly. So now he's teaming up again with Jonathan Gannon and Josh Sweat actually on that defensive line there for the Cardinals. But then you saw Shamar Stewart go off as an edge. He went, out of Texas A&M. He went to the Bengals. Then the next guy that was on, the next guy that was on my list that I wanted the Eagles to go after was Derek Harmon. Out of Oregon, defensive tackle, beast of a man, and he went to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And then when I saw James Pierce go off the board, and then Malachi Starks, as you mentioned, Harry, when he went to the Ravens, I thought there's no way the Eagles right now still have someone. And they've said this many times. They don't have 32 first-round grades on these players. So I was like, there's no way the Eagles think they have a first-round grade on anyone that's still available. And not only did they have a first-round grade on Jihaad Campbell, they had him as a top 10. But at that point, I'm thinking the Eagles are going to trade out. I thought at that point when Starks went off the board, the Eagles were going to trade out of the first round. And Louie, I was pleasantly surprised, to say the least, when you still had Campbell sitting right there for you.
Yeah, I was too, and I didn't think he was the player on their radar. I thought that if they were trying to trade up, I thought it might be for James Pierce, but they weren't getting in the business of trading future first-round picks, or the Giants coming up the board for a quarterback were willing to spend more, a second-round pick and 2/3 to get Jaxson Dart. So I thought maybe it was for Pierce. That was my guy personally. I wanted them to trade up for. I thought maybe it could be Donovan Ezereku, the edge rusher from Boston College. Maybe Nick Emenwari, the safety from South Carolina. Campbell, though, I'm not going to lie, I was surprised that he was their player because I didn't know if he'd be somebody they thought was worth that first-round investment, depending on what you thought he was at the next level. Just couldn't see Howie Roseman drafting somebody that played off-ball linebacker after giving Zach Bond an extension and Nakobe Dean on the board. But I think, or I should say with his injury, I was happy, though. I mean, I thought Campbell was a top 15 prospect. I thought there was no chance he'd be available in the 25 to 32 range at all.
Yeah, and both those guys you mentioned, Louie, are probably going to go very early in this second round tonight. Yeah. But yeah, when you guys were saying about, would they trade out, especially when Sanders kept dropping and you saw Dart go off the board, with the Giants, you're like, all right, now does somebody else jump in here and get a little itchy because they see Sanders falling, and could the Eagles trade back out? That was the one thing I was still thinking, like, that could happen. And, of course, it didn't, and he'll probably go first off the board to Cleveland tonight.
All right, we're going to talk about Jaxson Dart going off the board when he did, and the Giants getting 2 first-round picks as they traded back into the first round yesterday. Also, my reaction to Dart, and we'll get your reaction as well, fellas, including Louie, you mentioned the highlights. There's a great highlight of Jihaad Campbell going after Jaxson Dart at Ole Miss. That's a fun one we'll discuss. And you know what? It was fun to laugh at the Cowboys yesterday, especially when you saw one of their stars, Micah Parsons, break down yet again in another disappointing day for him when it came to the Cowboys' first pick going off the board in the first round of the draft. That's when we return. We'll break it all down and more. This is Locked On Eagles Squad podcast. That's Harry Mays, Louie DiBiase. I'm Mark Farzetta. I'll be back with you guys in just 1 second. Got to tell you about the amazing people at LinkedIn. Hopefully you're taking advantage of all they have to offer when it comes to getting the right job and the right candidate for that job. All small business owners, your work, it doesn't have to end when the clock hits 5 o'clock. Your business always is on your mind, never off the clock, which means you need to hire the right people at the right time. If you need a partner that works just as hard as you do, LinkedIn Jobs comes in handy. When you clock out, LinkedIn Jobs clocks in. LinkedIn makes it easy to post your job for free and share it with the network and get qualified candidates at all in one place at LinkedIn Jobs. Post your job with LinkedIn's network feature. That's right. LinkedIn's new feature can help you write a job description, then quickly get your job in front of the right people with deep candidate insights. Here's the pro tip from LinkedIn Jobs. Add the hiring frame, that's hashtag hiring frame, to your profile picture to double your reach to qualified candidates. No wonder 72% Think about that. 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn helps them find high-quality candidates and high-quality hires. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. That's linkedinjobs.com. linkedin.com with promo code LockedOnNFL.
Yeah, you talk about LinkedIn there, Mark. I keep seeing on my LinkedIn that a recruiter looked at your profile, and I'm like, well, let's go. You keep looking. Let's recruit. Let's go. Okay, pick up the phone. I'm available. Let's go.
Where's the offer? All right,
yeah, exactly.
That's adorable.
Quit looking and start offering.
See, unlike Jihaad Campbell, they only see Harry as an edge rusher. And he wants to play inside.
Yeah, they're pigeonholing me.
That's why they're recruiting him. Yeah.
I use two words to describe Harry Mays, and two words only: dominant force. That's the only way I describe Harry Mays. Okay,
in certain situations.
There you go, fellas. Yesterday, I mean, it's always fun to point and laugh at a division rival. It's especially fun to point and laugh at the Dallas Cowboys, and I think we can have some fun with the farm system, the Eagles farm system called the New York Giants. But first and foremost, it was pretty wild yesterday. I was trying to follow this as much as possible, and it really just came up on my timeline, my For You timeline. Adam Lefkoe, Darius Slay, and Micah Parsons were in on draft coverage. It was for Bleacher Report. I can't remember. And who was it? McMillan went off the board. I believe it was wide receiver out of Arizona.
Yeah, Arizona.
Carolina went to the Panthers.
Carolina's pick, but went to the Panthers. And they get Micah Parsons' reaction to it. Now, if you remember, I think he was pretty pissed off about Devontae Smith, the Eagles getting him. He was pretty pissed off about Jalen Carter. He's been pissed off at Cowboys picks before and the fact that they have gone to the Eagles. This obviously isn't the Eagles picking him up, but he didn't say it. And I'm not going to say the word, but he mouthed a certain word that begins with the letter F. And he seemed rather disappointed. Did you guys see this reaction?
Yes, you sent that to me last night, and at first I didn't know what I was watching, and then you told me who all these guys were, and I went back and watched it again. I was laughing. It was great.
Darius Slay, obviously no longer an Eagle, a Pittsburgh Steeler, but he had to console Micah Parsons. He had to be like, you'll be okay. You'll be okay, man. You'll be okay. That's always fun.
Disappointed because now he knows the Eagles just got a player like him, so now they're not going to want him potentially.
Right.
And he wants to be an Eagle, so that's what it is.
Yeah.
And also, by the way, the Giants' best player now, Abdul Carter, I think also wants to be. So the funniest part about all this is potentially two of the best players in this division for opposing teams want to be Eagles. So that's great.
Yeah.
The apple of their eye is just they want to wear the midnight and 4 times a year the Kelly Green. Kelly Green. So
but I actually disagree with Micah Parsons. I thought the Cowboys pick was a good pick. I mean, it's a very un-Jerry Jones type of pick. It's a stability kind of pick, and that guy's a stud. The guard from Alabama.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like I thought the division last night really did a good job. In addition to the Eagles, obviously, but it was like and I know we're going to talk about them all, but it was very kind of unlike what we've known these teams to do in the past. It seems like they're figuring it out.
I forget the gentleman's name, but I think he even writes for Cowboys.com, which would be shocking to me that he asked this question because I don't know if he still has his job or not, but I think Jerry Jones would fire this guy after the question. But the question was at the end of the season press conference, he asked the Cowboys if they can learn from division rivals and named the Eagles.
Mm-hmm.
And Stephen Jones, Jerry Jones, I think Schottenheimer as well, they all answered the question. We're like, oh yeah, we can learn from other teams. And my first thought was that's hilarious. Now any success the Cowboys have, it's going to be because they learned how to do it from the Eagles, which is cool. But that means they had success. Not cool. But then it also means that they could be taking a page out of the Eagles book. And when I saw that they made a classic Andy Reid type pick, that is, Harry, to use your word, stable, that did raise my eyebrows a little bit because they're usually looking for the quick fix, the sexy pick.
The shiny toy. They want the shiny toy under the tree in the first round.
And they went with somebody that is going to protect either Dak Prescott or whoever their quarterback is going to be. And that is very unlike the Cowboys.
Yep.
I think, too, you look at Booker. I think it was a little bit of a reach for 12 overall. I had him more as a 20 to 32 range prospect, but I think you could make the argument he is the best natural guard in this class. So, yeah, I'm honestly surprised it wasn't. If you would have said Dallas drafted Shadur Sanders at 12, would you be surprised at all?
No.
I wouldn't have been.
No.
Right? I mean, Deion Sanders' kid, Jerry Jones probably, Stephen Jones probably had to take the phone from him to make sure he didn't do that. But, yeah, I thought it was a little bit of a reach, but I do think it's a good player at an important position. So it was kind of weird seeing the NFC East. I agree with Harry. I actually kind of like the Giants night too. I'm more of a Jaxson Dart guy than the consensus, and Abdul Carter's a stud. So, and Josh Connolly from Washington, like get Jaden Daniels more protection. You're right. I think actually the division, it's fun to make fun of them, but I do actually think they had a solid night as well as the Eagles did.
I did too. The offensive coordinator in Washington, that's the guy he wanted. Apparently he sent a note to the general manager written on a piece to draft the Oregon tackle.
What is it, like the movie Draft Day where he just writes Josh Connolly no matter what?
I do have to hand it to Washington. They've had a hell of an offseason. They've really had an incredible offseason. You're talking about getting Tunsil in. I mean, all the protection in the world now that you have for Daniels, that's pretty special. Bringing another weapon for him as well, and Deebo Samuel. They've had. I got to give them credit.
Absolutely.
I still believe they had a lot of catching up to do to the Eagles. I think they took some giant steps forward, or I should say big leaps forward in this offseason. To go to the Giants now, they supposedly get their franchise quarterback. They have Russell Wilson in the house already. They get a guy who I agree, I think we all agree, Abdul Carter, an absolute stud in the draft. Louie, I'll ask you this first. How much better did the Giants get yesterday?
I thought they got a lot better. I think that Abdul Carter, you combined that trio of Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau, who they did pick up the fifth-year option right after, so no trade speculation there. There was some of those rumors if they were going to take Carter. They kind of bringing back that old 2007 to 2011 Giants NASCAR package on the defensive line. You got Dexter Lawrence on the inside. That's a good front seven in New York. And I don't know if, again, though, it's all about quarterback. Jaxson Dart, I like better than most did. I think he was the best of a bad situation in this class. Do I think he is the next Jalen Hurts or a Jaden Daniels type? I still am skeptical, but I think the Giants got a lot better. And Dart was the right pick. I just think if you're going to take a quarterback in this class, you might as well go for the ceiling. I think he has the deep ball. I think he has mobility that Sanders doesn't have. I think Dart versus Sanders, they made the right call. I guess between the two, for if they were going to take a quarterback, I wouldn't at all in this class, but I guess between the two, they made the right call.
Harry, how much better did the Giants get yesterday?
Yeah, they got quite a bit better. I mean, that Carter's going to change, help change that defense. I mean, really, I think what the mindset here is like, we got to get way better on defense first. And I think they're going to make a market improvement on that side of the football. Russell Wilson to me is washed. I don't know how many games he's going to end up starting before they turn the page to the Jaxson Dart era. I think it'll probably be somewhere less than 10 games. And Dart's going to force his way in there, and we'll see what happens with that. I agree with Louie. If you're looking at the two quarterbacks, him and Sanders, I take Dart. So I thought they made the right call there.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting when I was watching everything go down last night. Dart, I thought, was getting consolation hugs from people. I guess the camera was just late showing him. But no, obviously he was really excited to join the Giants, and I think the Giants fans should be excited to get him, because I think he is the complete package. I absolutely think he's a complete package. And when you talk about how much better they got yesterday, I think they got a lot better yesterday.
Yeah.
Two things. We might have fun with it, but Brian Daboll's not an idiot. Brian Daboll's a good offensive mind, and they did some great things in Buffalo. And let's not forget, they're two offensive coordinators now removed from Brian Daboll. It took they made the wrong hire, then they made the right one, in-season change. It was actually right after right after the Eagles beat them in overtime 2 years ago. They made that change at offensive coordinator. I think Brian Daboll's a very smart head coach. Mike Kafka is a guy that has gotten a lot of consideration for head coaching jobs around the NFL, former Eagles third string quarterback.
Northwestern, right?
Northwestern, exactly.
Yeah, smart guy.
Yeah, absolutely. I had the opportunity was here at Philly to talk to him many times, and off the charts guy when it comes to just football intelligence. So I think they have that in place already. And now on the offensive side of the football, they're getting a quarterback that they haven't had. And Russell Wilson, I do believe, same thing, Harry. I think he's washed. I think Jaxson Dart's going to be starting their first game. I think
the first game. You think it's going to be the first game? Oh, okay.
All
right.
I think when it comes to Russell Wilson, I mean, if you remember, I know he was a third-round pick. He wasn't a first-round pick, and he certainly wasn't somebody that the Seahawks traded into their first round for. But if you remember, they made the signing that year of Matt Flynn after Matt Flynn had that like 6 touchdown game.
The week 17 of his life. Yeah,
yep.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He is the definition of put good film down whenever you get the chance. And you too might sign a $27
like Scott
million
Mitchell
deal.
from way back in the day. Remember him? Scott, that was
okay.
another one.
I thought that's in the time machine there for me, man.
I feel like that one outdates.
Well, I'm old,
guys.
But I think Russell Wilson is going to be there to be the guy to do the mentoring. He's going to be the guy to have the progression. But I think Brian Dable is gonna see Jaxson Dart and say, we got to get this going. Because look, as much respect as I have for Brian Dable, I don't think he has an infinite amount of time to turn this around. If he could show the progression of a young quarterback, then I think that's going to keep him around there in New York for a while longer.
Yeah, agreed.
So I think they got a lot better yesterday. There'll be learning curve, obviously. There'll be time for him to pick it up and all that. But the other aspect of it is you talk about that NASCAR package, and you mentioned it, Louie. You go back in the day with that Giants team and what they were able to do to get after quarterbacks, and this is a very similar situation to that, especially when you talk about having that anchor. And when you talk about a Dexter Lawrence being in the middle of the defensive line, the havoc he can wreak, we talk about it all the time here in Philadelphia already. When we talk about Jalen Carter, you're talking about a similar thing there in New York. And they've got guys that can just flat out get after the quarterback. Now, the Eagles, fortunately, still have an incredible offensive line here.
Strength versus strength. Yep.
Yeah.
Iron and iron, man.
Yep.
Absolutely. And they also have the running game to boot when you talk about what they could do out of the backfield with Saquon Barkley, as we all know. And a versatile quarterback, as we all know, in Jalen Hurts. So if there is going to be a counter, as much as I think the Giants took a step forward yesterday, I still think they're not competing with the Eagles here, where I think we're still talking about a division that comes down to the Commanders and the Eagles. But the Giants, I thought, did have a really, really good day yesterday. And yes, Abdul Carter, hopefully he gets frustrated there in New York, and after 4 years, wants to join up with the Philadelphia Eagles and hopefully join forces with a guy like Jihaad Campbell. What do you think?
Hey,
well, they still.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say between Abdul Carter and Micah Parsons now, like the odds of one of them joining the Eagles down the road, like at least we doubled our odds, I think, a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I would say.
I think the Giants are still going to finish last in the division, but they're not going to be a doormat this year.
Agreed.
If we can agree with that. I mean, there's finishing last, and then there's finishing last the way they've have the last couple of seasons. But I wanted to get your guys' take because this was the name that was thrown around last night when they were talking about Jaxson Dart. Jalen Hurts. Were a lot of the comparisons, and I know Louie, he was one of the guys you really liked. Do you see a lot of similarities between those two quarterbacks?
Yeah, I actually do in a way, and Jaxson Dart even said throughout the process that he tries to emulate his game after Jalen Hurts. I think he was talking a lot about the off-the-field stuff as well as leadership. But yeah, when it comes to the deep, I think his two biggest strengths, like Jalen Hurts, is the deep ball and the mobility. I think the rest of it is still a work in progress.
And toughness, too.
And toughness.
He's tough.
I think he's got to chill on taking some of these hits. I was going back and watching some of his tape, and he instead of getting out of bounds, he just puts his shoulder down, tries to run through two guys. He's got that Jalen Hurts competitiveness. I think the clutchness as well. Like his fourth quarter numbers are really impressive, and he's so calm during pressure like Jalen. He has that kind of stoic, not panicky mobility like Carson Wentz used to have.
Yeah.
Everything's under control with Jaxson Dart, and I feel like that's Jalen Hurts too. So I do see the comparisons. I think the floor is a little bit lower with Dart, but yeah, I could totally see it.
That's good. Panicky mobility. I like that because
just
was
like you're
Carson
running around
Wentz.
with like Jameis Winston too. Like you don't know where you're going. There's no plan with the mobility.
Right.
Whereas Hurts and Dart, they kind of know where they're going, and it's in control.
Yeah. Plus he had a head coach that just turned him loose. I mean, you're going to play for Lane Kiffin, and you're going to get turned loose. Exactly. Let's go. Let's have some fun.
The other aspect, I mean, we would call that oftentimes, and we did this with Jalen Hurts as well, and Carson Wentz, hero ball.
Yeah,
exactly.
I don't, and to describe it as you just did, Louie, I think it's a good way to describe it, but we use it a lot in Philly. We talk a lot about hero ball, and hey, you can rely on the guys around you. That's why I value, one of the reasons I value Jalen Hurts so much is that he's gotten away from any tendency to do that, and I think what's proof of that is how often they ran the football. and how often he checked to runs because he diagnosed what the defense was doing and was just like, oh, you're not going to stop Saquon. It's adorable that you guys got dressed and everything and showed up, but I'm just going to give the ball to Saquon on this play.
Here comes 26. Yeah.
Exactly. See you later. But the interesting thing that I noticed with Jaxson Dart, just going back and watching some stuff on him yesterday, is trying to fight for an extra yard as a quarterback is a dumb idea. That is a really dumb idea. And when Jalen Hurts first got into the league, and I'll even say, his first starts when he took over for Carson Wentz, but also the following year, one of the things I loved about his game was that hero ball wasn't a thing for him. That really I didn't see develop until even his near MVP season, especially his third year as a starter. That's when I started to see it really develop, that hero ball thing. And then he started to play a lot smarter this past season, which I'm obviously grateful for, as is all of Philadelphia. But one thing I did notice from Jaxson Dart on the negative side of things is he would fight for that extra yard like he was a running back or a tight end or like he was Carson Wentz. So my thought was the nervousness wasn't there, certainly, but the fight and the want to was certainly there. But if you're a quarterback, get down, get out of bounds, throw it away. Yeah. Now, another thing that I also noticed from Jalen Hurts this year along those same lines, and maybe this is also what Jaxson Dart will have for the Giants, is the ability to just take the sack. Like just get down. Just don't bother fighting.
Don't turn it over.
There. Situational awareness, right? You want the guy to have the ability to make those plays, but they have to pick and choose their spots. And that's what I think Dart needs to work on. That's what Carson Wentz could never figure out. It wasn't always his fault. Sometimes he's throwing the ball to Deontay Burnett and Joshua Perkins, so he was trying to play hero ball justifiably so. But as a quarterback, you got to learn that balance, and I think Jalen's perfected that.
A loss of 9 and a punt isn't the worst thing that can happen in the NFL.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. All right, when we come back, we mentioned this earlier. We didn't get into this segment. We'll get into the next one here. I'm sure we all went back, people watching right now, people in the comments, I know I did, went back and watched more of Jihaad Campbell. Just highlights, just watching him play. A couple of things that stuck out now, knowing he's going to be a member of the Philadelphia Eagles, the fact that he was available at 31 for the Eagles to move up and get. But a couple of things stuck out to me. There was one word that I don't throw this around when it comes to rookies ever. When it comes, guys haven't even played in the NFL yet. I don't throw it around, but it's something that I noticed yesterday and going back and watching Jihaad Campbell. We'll talk about that when we return. This is Locked On Eagles Squad podcast. That's Harry Mays. For people here on Locked On Eagles YouTube channel, that's a man right there that you know and you already love. That's Louie DiBiase. Make sure you're following all his content here on Locked On Eagles YouTube channel. Make sure you're liking and subscribing and all that fun stuff. When we come back, we'll take a closer look at Jihaad Campbell and also how he was available at 31. That's when we return on Locked On Eagles Squad podcast. I'm Mark Farzetta. Back after this. FanDuel, baby. Get in on all the action when it comes to FanDuel and everything they have to offer. From baseball to football, basketball playoffs, whatever the case might be, they got you covered. Hockey, everything. NBA playoffs, full swing. FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on all the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and you place your first $5 bet and you win, you'll get $250 in bonus bets. What? Yes. $250 in bonus bets. I love how FanDuel makes it so easy to make your bets and also picking your favorite team or diving into player props, parlays even. From three-pointers to steals to assists, FanDuel has so many ways to get in on the action, whether it's your favorite player or your favorite team, and also get in on your favorite prop bets. Plus, after the game tips off, you can combine live prop bets into single game parlays for a chance to win bigger bucks. But don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. That's betting your first $5 bet and winning, and you get $250 in bonus bets when you win. Make sure you get in on all the action with FanDuel at FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com. There we go, gentlemen. Instincts. Instincts is a word I don't like throwing around. When the Eagles took Jeremiah Trotter Jr., I said if anyone is going to have instincts, it's going to be a guy that played for a Pro Bowl linebacker, a franchise favorite here in Philadelphia. It's going to be Jeremiah Trotter Jr. And I thought in the limited experience we saw preseason, regular season, I thought he had some good instincts. But I don't like to throw that word around. The thing that jumped out to me about Campbell, Harry, I don't know if you saw this as well. I don't know if it jumped out to you. The instincts of this guy, whether he's lining up on the inside. I mean, just coming into Alabama as an edge rusher and then being able to play more off ball inside, that to me showed great instincts, great know-how, great mental fortitude that you need. And every first step was the right step. Everything that you saw him do at Alabama, it was instinctual. I mean, I'm sure a lot of this is coachable, but when you come into the NFL, you're going to need to really rely on those instincts. And the heads-up player that he seemed to be, when he's in pursuit, he always seems to make the right decision. When it comes to looking in the backfield, he knows the right read. These are all instinctual things that he's able to do. And I'm not putting him in the same category. I'm just saying it's the same box that was checked very early on and talked about at length by Vic Fangio. When he talked about Cooper DeJean, talked about good instincts. When he talked about Quinyon Mitchell, he talked about good instincts. He talked about guys that were going to come in and have an impact right out of the gate simply because they already knew where they needed to be. And if they weren't in the right spot, they made sure they committed it to instant memory to be in the right spot next time. And I look at a guy like Campbell, obviously playing on either edge or linebacker here for the Eagles. I look at a guy that's going to have that very similar instinctual mindset that Vic Fangio really craves when he talks about defensive playmakers.
Yeah, I think you're spot on, Mark, with that. It's instincts, and it's also within the framework of the defense, because what he reminded me of just in visually when he was wearing that number 11 was LeVar Arrington way back in the day at Penn State.
Good comp,
but LeVar Arrington would play like his own game. He was, regardless of the framework of the defense, he would just go do his own thing, and he freewheeled a lot. And that was one of the problems that he had when he came to the NFL. Was sort of fitting into a more structured defensive scheme. This guy, it plays within the scheme, but has tremendous instincts and athletic ability to go make the play.
Yeah,
Louie, you in the same school?
Yeah, I think you have to have the traits, and I love to bet on traits and upside. The raw athletic score, I think Campbell was at a 9.8, so just like tested unbelievably. You build this kind of guy in a lab to play football, right? But you have to, you're right, like the instincts, you have to have that. I always say you have to have a plan at the line of scrimmage. And I think some players, like Harry was talking about with LeVar Arrington, sometimes they just play with a chicken with their head cut off, and they're just running around. And again, you can have all the talent in the world, but you got to have those natural football instincts. And the Eagles have a lot of those guys on the second and third level of the defense. When you talk about just like box players, Zach Bond, Jihaad Campbell, Cooper DeJean, you got Nakobe Dean as well. Sidney Brown, he's got to figure out the instincts a little bit more. But if he figures that out, the firepower, the range, the size, the smarts of these guys, the Eagles haven't had a lot of athletes and just natural talents like this in that middle of the field. And now they've got them at corner, safety, and linebacker. And that's really exciting.
Yeah, I see this comment. It's earlier in the show. Wanda Pinkett put it in here. You ever think it was Vic? This is when we were talking about philosophy, and we could spin it back. Oh, Wanda also gives us a smiley face. So there you go. Thank you, Wanda. Do you think that his philosophy comes down to placating is too strong a word? Really going with the guidance of Vic Fangio. I'll put it to you like that. Like, the Eagles have gotten defensive players over the years. You just rattled off a bunch of them, Louie. But how much of this is for what Vic Fangio wants to be? Because I also have seen comps to Van Ginkel with the Dolphins, who was one of the players that apparently still really liked Vic Fangio right before he left. Talk about players that are going to play well in his system and understand what he wants to do. When Quinyon Mitchell was talking about Vic Fangio's scheme, he's like, oh, yeah, I did a lot of this stuff in college. When Cooper DeJean talked about it, he talked about his own versatility of playing on the outside, playing on the inside, and even being asked the question about possibly moving to safety. That doesn't look like it's happening anytime soon. Do you think the Eagles are really tapping into Vic Fangio here, Harry, as far as, all right, this is the player that we really like? Your thoughts?
Yeah, I definitely do, and I think that's the smart way to go about it. I mean, that was one of the things that kind of excited me about Vic Fangio coming here was the 3-4. I always thought, that's a defensive scheme that I always kind of favored in the NFL, and I was, very frustrated for many years that the Eagles would never really do it. And I think you can just get so many more versatile talents to play in that scheme. than you can in the traditional 4-3 setup. And I think that's what you're seeing here. It's like, all right, we know what Vic wants to run. We know what kind of players he likes. And, they're out there. Let's hope somebody falls to us. If not, we'll make a move up and go grab one.
Yeah, I think you'd be crazy to not listen to one of the best defensive minds in the history of this game for what he wants. And you have to have that marriage of the GM bringing in players that fit. You don't want to bring in a player just that's based on a scheme, right? You want versatility. That's the nice part about these players is I think these guys fit in Fangio's defense, but I think they would fit in any defense. So you want versatile players, versatile personnel. But yeah, you want to have it sync up where the coaches want to use these players, the GMs invest heavy resources in. I go back to the 2017 draft in the third round. I loved Rasul Douglas coming out of West Virginia. I thought that he was underutilized in Philadelphia. That was proven to be true because he went on to Green Bay, had a good career, went on to Buffalo, played really well with the Bills as well for years. Jim Schwartz, it didn't feel like Rasul really fit what Schwartz wanted to do, but Howie invested a top 3-round pick in him, and it just felt like that never really, synced up. Like they were always playing Jalen Mills and Ronald Darby and even Avonte Maddox at times on the outside. So I think you have to listen to your coaches. The coaches don't run the draft, but it's got to sync up for sure.
I have a distinct memory with Rasul Douglas talking to him one time. He was actually playing pretty well, and I just said, how do you keep this up and all that stuff? He said, man, I'm just trying to stay off the Greyhound. And I was like, the Greyhound? Yeah, okay. Yeah. I'm the only person that didn't get it like right away. The bust. The Greyhound bust.
Yep.
I'm an idiot. All right. Today, second and third round NFL draft. Eagles obviously have 2 picks here, and we're talking about a situation where there's where they have
both
talent
late.
left.
Yeah,
both late. They have talent left on the board, obviously. A lot of people are looking at the safety position still. Eagles could certainly use some depth there. Personally, I'm not really blown away with either safety candidate the Eagles have right now on the roster. We've talked about this. There's no denying that I think Justin Simmons is being a Philadelphia Eagle.
It's still alive. The dream is still alive.
Still happening. When Starks went off the board yesterday, I went, yes, even though, I wouldn't have hated it.
No.
Keep it going, baby. Keep fanning the flame, But when it comes to today, there's a couple of people I have on my wish list. Louie, I'll ask you first, and we'll talk about I didn't realize. Sorry, late for the break here. It's a quick one. So let me just hit the thing here. And then we'll also go through some comments here. I just got to hit the marker on this, so don't move anyone. We'll be right back. And we're back, just like that. Eagle Squad podcast here on the Locked On Eagles YouTube channel. Harry Mays, Louie DiBiase, Mark Farzetta with you here. All right. We're talking about positions, talking about need, talking about wants here. This is where you start to really maybe getting a little bit more liberal with how you want to apply this in the second and third rounds. When it comes to today, Louie, I'll start with you. Is there anyone in particular that you're looking at that you think will be in striking distance for the Eagles? Similar philosophy as yesterday, striking distance for the Eagles to move up and get in this draft. Who would make you excited?
Yeah, that's the thing. I want to say Nick Emenwari, the South Carolina safety, but I think he'll be off the board really quick. Kevin Winston Jr., the Penn State safety, is the apple of my eye, at least in the second round at pick 64. Okay. Maybe you even try to trade up. You still have 3 fifth-round picks this year. You got a lot of day 3 picks next year as well. I think Kevin Winston Jr., you can make the argument, would be the best safety in this class if he didn't have that season-ending injury last September. Had the best missed tackle rate of any safety in this class last year, 2 years ago. Has the length, the wingspan, the coverage ability, the speed against tight ends. I think he would be the ideal player to rotate through with Reed Blankenship and Sidney Brown. Winston Jr. is the guy that I would love.
Oh, an injured player falling in the draft right to the Eagles? That I was going to say,
it fits the theme of this year anyway. Keep it rolling.
Yeah, so are you – all right, so safety position would make you do a cartwheel.
Yeah, I would say safety. I want to come away today with either one of safety or tight end. It can be one or the other for me. Like an Elijah Arroyo would be great, or a Mason Taylor. And then I want to get an offensive lineman. I want to get a guard, tackle kind of versatile piece. That's what I want. One guy in the trenches, and then give me that safety or tight end, that more immediate need for 2025. That's my wish list at least.
Harry, what are you looking at?
Well, Louie mentioned him right at the end there, offhanded. Mason Taylor's the guy for me, the tight end from LSU, 6'5", 250 pounds, can really catch the ball, can block. They comp him to Zach Ertz, but this guy makes plays after the catch unlike Zach Ertz. Zach Ertz, loved him, tremendous career, but man, where he caught the ball was typically where the play ended. And this guy is, has got the ability to stretch plays into bigger plays. So that's my desired pick in the second round. And then in the third round, I'm just going to go best available defensive tackle. And maybe you have to trade up, use one of those fifth-round picks to get up a little higher, because now you're starting to look at where would that be? Somewhere in the low 90s, when you get to the end of the third round, right? So
96,
somewhere in 96. So you might have to pop up a few spots to get maybe the best guy that's still out there.
I know this is going to be shocking to all the people in the comments and all the people watching right now. We don't really get together and prep the show.
No,
we don't have a meeting. All this amazing talent is just natural, folks.
Yeah.
It's just natural. But we are all exactly on the same page here, especially when you talk about tight ends. I got 4 names for you when it comes to tight ends. There's the kind of a pipe dream tight end in Jerome Fannin out of Bowling Green. I think he's going to be off the board. Mason Taylor is not a pipe dream. I think he will be available for the Eagles. And one of the things to keep in mind here is he's not a project by any means. He comes in ready to catch the football.
Right.
Like, make no mistake about it. He's ready to play football. So if you're talking about moving on from Dallas Goedert, which is possible, and also when we talk about moving up and trading picks, I don't think it should be lost on us that we also could still be looking at the Eagles possibly trading Dallas Goedert today. So that could happen. Then I also look at Terrence Ferguson out of Oregon, most likely a third-round pick if they're going to decide to go safety earlier in the second round. And then in the third round, they want to go after a guy like Terrence Ferguson out of Oregon, potentially a third-round pick there. Much later, I know the Eagles had a positive impact with Gunnar Helm. That could also be a third-round pick, tight end out of Texas that the Eagles met with at the Combine and apparently really liked what he had to do there. A blocking tight end as well as a pass-catching tight end that could be a playmaker for the Eagles. That would be some development at the NFL level. Winston is the guy without question, Penn State. The connection there I know people will love. A lot of Penn Staters will be happy about that, but will he be there in the second round, late in the second round, within reach in the second round for the Eagles to go up and get when you mention an injury, but you also factor in the talent? He's a guy that Howie is going to be that famous Howie Roseman meme with him in the binoculars, just watching him fall down the draft board. And then Nick Emanuwari, again, out of South Carolina, not going to be there.
No.
Pipe dream type situation I see for the Eagles. But I would love to see defensive tackle as well, Harry. I'm in the same boat as you when it comes to getting somebody that could potentially take over for the loss of Milton Williams. I know a lot of people, they want to know where rookies are going to be placed in as far as who they're going to take over for. I think the Eagles absolutely got that guy yesterday in Campbell and who could take over for a guy like Josh Sweat or even Phil Avoid that was still left behind by Hassan Reddick's impact on this Eagles defense, even though it was pre-Vic Fangio. But Milton Williams' spot needs to be taken up. The Eagles need to find somebody that can take over that spot.
Yeah, and they picked him up in the third round a few years ago too. So, getting a tackle that can play in the third round is very doable.
Yeah, and they do have Moro Ijoma on the roster, was top 15 last year in pass rush win rate. I think he could take a big step in year 3, but you're right. They got to add somebody else in that rotation. Ijoma alone is not going to make up for the production that Milton Williams leaves behind. I think maybe you continue with this theme. You go Alabama and Georgia. Maybe you go Toledo back-to-back years. Quinyon Mitchell last year. Darius Alexander, I know he's a little bit older of a prospect, but I think he kind of compares to Milton Williams a little bit and can take advantage of those one-on-ones that Jalen Carter allows. So I think Alexander would be my favorite tackle of the options available.
I have a feeling today, I think yesterday we kind of knew the Eagles were going to move. I thought we was going to be a little bit more than one spot. I wouldn't be shocked at all today if Howie Roseman was really wheeling and dealing. I wouldn't be shocked today if we did see Dallas Goedert move.
Yeah, I wouldn't either.
Yeah. Today would be the day that I feel like Howie would pull it off. If it was any day, I feel like it's going to be. If it's not today, I'm going to tell you this. It's going to be a couple months from now. This is going to drag on, I think, through the offseason. But today just might be that day. When it comes to, gentlemen, the players that are still on this roster, though, the safety position, we're talking about two guys that don't really have a lot of experience here. Tristan McCollum, and we're talking about Sidney Brown. Now, we just talked about the idea of adding a safety today. I think the only legitimate guy that the Eagles are really looking at to really be that safety next to Reed Blankenship after, that's on the roster right now after the departure of Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, it's Sidney Brown. But I still have, and I'm a Sidney Brown fan, I just still very much have questions as to whether or not Vic Fangio can harness the aggression and the heat-seeking missile that Sidney Brown is. And that's how I think that's why I think the starting safety next to Reed Blankenship is still not on this roster. I've talked about it a number of times who I think it's going to be. But if the Eagles are looking at safeties today, I don't want them to pass over anybody because they feel like they can stand pat on the position that they're in.
I was going to say, this was all feeling very Justin Simmons coded, right, Harry? I feel like that's...
Yeah, right. I know.
Totally.
I was trying not to say the name.
I'm reading what he's writing now. I mean,
Yeah,
he's,
right.
he's gotten me, singing the choir too. I mean, it's unbelievable. He's got an amazing way, this Farzetta.
Yeah,
He does.
but in all seriousness, I look at it right now. I don't want to go into the season. I don't want to see the Eagles go into training camp with what's on the roster right now. I think they need a lot more competition at that position.
I think Sidney Brown, I think they do have a lot of belief in him, but I don't think when they traded Chauncey Gardner-Johnson away, it was because they want to give. It's not like the Ringo thing. I think they let Darius Slay walk because they want to see what Ringo can do this year. I don't think it's the same with Sidney Brown. Even last year, you mentioned Tristan McCollum. He was playing over Sidney Brown when they were using a third safety at times. So, I like Sid, but like you said, he really has to rein it in. He plays like a crazy person on the field. And you love to have that range and speed, that hip power, but he's got to play with more control or he's not going to gain the trust of Fangio. And if you're in Fangio's doghouse, you're not going to play.
Yeah. And don't forget about Adoree Jackson, too.
Adoree Jackson as well.
Yeah. Yeah, the veteran you're getting in there. Let's get a couple more comments in here. I like this right here. Izzy, is that how you say that? Izzy? Campbell is going to be what Vic wanted Huff to be. That's an interesting comment.
What we all wanted Huff to be.
I was going to say.
I'll never forget the first time Vic Fangio was asked about Bryce Huff, and he talked about him like he was an undrafted free agent rookie. I was like, no, you just spent $53 million on this guy.
Yeah, it did feel doomed from the start,
Yeah.
It didn't feel good. Loyal listener and viewer of my show, Ari, lives out on the West Coast. He was just on the East Coast, now back on the West Coast there. Ari says, go Birds. Appreciate you, brother. What moves we making today? We kind of just talked about that. What do we got here? Moro Ajomo, potentially moving up and taking that spot that was occupied by Milton Williams. There you go.
He put that up there just as Louie was going into the whole thing about
there we
it.
go.
Yeah, it was perfect timing.
You guys reading each other's mouth. Simpatico, I believe is the word for that. Simpatico.
Now, what about the Jalen Milroe comment here?
Hold on, what am I missing?
Jonathan Harvey.
Oh, beautiful.
Jonathan, I'm sorry. Oh, Jonathan Harvey. What's up, bud?
Could you imagine?
Eagles just maybe
I say no.
Quarterback factory.
Yeah.
Just have that feeling knowing how he likes quarterbacks regardless. Well, okay. Let me start off by saying let me just start off by saying no.
Right.
So no. However,
look, if they want to start running two quarterbacks full time and they're going to completely change the way offenses play in the NFL, then go for it. If not, please don't do it.
I just want everyone to remember I just said no.
Right.
Let me just say it one more time. No.
Noted.
However, Milroe, Sanders, if the Eagles took them and they got them a little bit of playing time, and even if it's Jalen Hurts plays every game and the Eagles have the division locked up and the number 1 seed locked up with 2 weeks left, think about what you could do with 8 quarters of film, good film, with Sanders or Milroe, if the Eagles are still surrounding them with a little bit of talent. Maybe starters aren't playing every down, but think of the haul you could get in
I think
a
you'll end up
draft.
just getting the pick back that you spent on him. I don't know.
but maybe more.
I can't stand for this Tanner McKee disrespect. I won't allow it.
Somebody was floating that out last night about potentially moving Tanner McKee. I can't remember who it was.
Yeah.
Somebody was, Tanner McKee's already putting enough good tape out there. You could potentially trade him. Well, imagine if it was somebody that apparently had more of the pedigree or the background of a Milroe or a Sanders. They put a little bit of film. Again, hold on. I started by no, but now I'm in the crazy person talk. Just what if? Just in a world where all of a sudden you put a little good film and like, oh, this guy isn't a complete mess up, or this guy is focused. A little bit of good film with those two, you could get better than your second round pick.
Don't forget about the kid they got from Cleveland, the UCLA quarterback that played for Chip Kelly.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
DTR?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. Yes, right.
Yeah.
That's right.
The Kenny Pickett trade.
Right.
The Kenny Pickett trade, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I like seeing Mark put on his sports radio hat on just for a minute. He's like, just hear me out on this Jalen Miller thing.
No,
just a little bit of a callback.
Unfortunately, it's that thinking that also made me repeat kindergarten when I was just a little boy.
That's fair.
But it crossed my mind. People were floating it out on social media, and I was thinking of like, okay, what's the one way this would be a good idea?
Yeah.
And also, by the way, when you hear the same general manager ever in any instance utter the word quarterback factory, that is tattooed on my brain now. Like that can't leave my brain.
I have a shirt that says quarterback factory on it, and it's in the text of the Cheesecake Factory logo. So that's
nice.
That's fantastic. All right, fellas. Let's just close with the name. The happiest we would be today. The Eagles get this player. Louie, go ahead.
I'll say Kevin Winston Jr.
Yeah. All right. I spoiler. I'm on the same page as you.
Yep.
Harry, where are you at?
Mason Taylor.
You're Mason Taylor.
Yep.
That would be.
It's good.
Getting a weapon on the offensive side would be exciting.
How about the SEC last night? 15 of the 32 players played in the SEC.
Not
15.
surprising.
I mean,
It's just paint by numbers. It's paint by numbers for the general managers. That's all it is. Paint by numbers. Folks, make sure you guys like and subscribe. You'll be seeing Louie DiBiase, obviously, on this channel all the live long day throughout the draft process and over the weekend. I'm sure all that stuff. Louie, you have some great content. I know you always do here on the Eagles Locked On YouTube channel. You got me, Harry. Jason's going to be joining us again next week. Louie, you're going to be joining us whenever the schedule permits, which we're grateful for. Thank you. Make sure you guys like and subscribe on Locked On Eagles YouTube channel, and make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcasts as well. That's Harry Mays, Louie DiBiase. I'm Mark Farzetta for Eagles Squad Podcast. Here's hoping Howie has a couple more moves up his sleeves for today. Have a great rest of your day, everybody. Have a great rest of your draft. Have a great weekend. We'll see you guys next week. See you then.